Did you know that you are likely lied to between 10 and 200 times every single day? That's not a number I pulled out of a hat. That's what the research says. Most of these are harmless little things, the social lubricants that keep society from grinding to a halt. Oh, that's a lovely new haircut. Sorry, I'm busy that night. But some are different. Some lies are foundational. They're the kind that can cost you your retirement savings, your trust in a loved one, or even your safety. As we get older, people can start to see us as easier targets. They bank on our good nature, our willingness to give the benefit of the doubt. I'm here to tell you to stop giving it so freely. For over 30 years, I sat across from people in small, windowless rooms. My job wasn't just to listen to their words, it was to watch their bodies tell the real story. Because when the mouth is busy weaving a fantasy, the body is screaming the truth. It has no choice. It's wired into our biology, a primitive system that can't be easily overridden by a clever mind. Today, I'm not going to teach you parlor tricks. I'm going to give you 5 keys that former FBI interrogators and old-school detectives like me used to unlock the truth. This isn't about becoming paranoid. It's about becoming aware. It's about learning to see what's been right in front of you all along, hidden in plain sight. The first key is perhaps the most powerful, because it's the one they can't control. It's the flicker of truth that flashes across their face before the mask is put back in place. Let's talk about the soul's brief window, the micro-expression. Have you ever had that gut feeling? A split-second sense that what you just saw on someone's face didn't match what you heard from their mouth. That's not your imagination. That's you, subconsciously picking up on a micro-expression. These are involuntary facial expressions that last for a fraction of a second. We're talking 1/15th to 1/25th of a second. They flash across the face and are gone, before the conscious brain can even register and suppress them. It's a momentary leak of a true, concealed emotion. I remember a case involving a slick real estate developer. Let's call him Marcus. He was accused of running a Ponzi scheme, bilking retirees out of millions. He sat in my office, dressed in a suit that cost more than my car, looking as calm and collected as a man discussing the weather. He denied everything with a smooth, practiced confidence. He had an answer for every question, a document for every claim. But I was watching his face. I asked him a very specific question about an investor, a widow named Mrs. Gable who had lost everything. I said, "Marcus, tell me about the promise you made to Eleanor Gable about her husband's legacy." For the briefest of moments, the smallest fraction of a second, his upper lip curled in a unilateral sneer. It was pure contempt. Disgust. It was gone almost instantly, replaced by a mask of thoughtful concern. But I saw it. The camera in the room saw it. That flicker of raw, unfiltered emotion told me more than his 2 hours of carefully constructed lies. That was the real Marcus. Psychologically, this happens because our emotional responses, generated in the limbic system of the brain, are lightning fast. The impulse to express that emotion on our face is immediate. The part of our brain that handles social cues and deception, the prefrontal cortex, has to then step in and say, "No, don't show that." But it's slower. The micro-expression is that tiny gap between the feeling and the cover-up. Think about it in your own life. Have you ever received a gift you hated but had to pretend to love? For a split second, did your face fall in disappointment before you forced that smile? That's the leak. The next time you're in a conversation where the stakes feel even a little bit high, don't just listen. Watch. Watch for that flash of fear when you ask about their timeline, or that flicker of anger when you question their motive. It's the truth, trying to get out. All right, let's move on to the eyes. There's an old saying, "The eyes are the window to the soul." It's a nice piece of poetry, but in an interrogation room, it's a liability. Why? Because every liar on the planet has heard it too. The number one myth about lying is that a dishonest person can look you in the eye. It's what our parents taught us. "Look at me when you tell me you didn't eat those cookies." As a result, amateurs will look away, their eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. But a practiced liar, someone who has thought about their story, knows this. So, what do? They overcompensate. I call it the liar's stare. Instead of avoiding eye contact, they lock onto you with an intensity that is unnatural and unnerving. They will stare at you without blinking, trying to project sincerity and confidence through sheer force of will. It's a conscious, deliberate act designed to say, "See? I'm looking right at you. I have nothing to hide." But it's a performance, and a bad one at that. Let me tell you about a young man, a college kid named Kevin. He came in to report his vintage Mustang had been stolen from his driveway overnight. He was distraught, telling the story with perfect, sad clarity. And he never, ever broke eye contact. His gaze was fixed on mine. It didn't matter if my partner shifted in his chair or if someone walked past the door, his eyes were glued to me. Normal human conversation involves natural breaks in eye contact. People look away to access memory, to consider a thought, or simply to give social interactions a comfortable rhythm. There's a natural ebb and flow. Kevin's stare had no flow. It was a dam holding back the truth. His blinking rate dropped to almost nothing. It was like watching a statue. The overcompensation was the tell. We later found out he sold the car for parts to pay off a gambling debt and was trying to commit insurance fraud. His attempt to look trustworthy was the very thing that made him look guilty. This happens because lying creates a high cognitive load. That's the scientific term for your brain working overtime. A liar has to do 3 things at once. 1. Suppress the truth. 2. Invent the lie. And 3. Monitor your reaction to see if you're buying it. With all that mental machinery whirring away, the fine-tuned nuances of normal social behavior go out the window. It's too much to manage. So, they default to a crude imitation of what they think an honest person does, which is maintain steady eye contact. But they push it too far. In your daily life, pay attention to this. Think about a time you were negotiating with a salesman or a contractor. When you asked a tough question about the final price or a hidden fee, did their gaze suddenly become intensely focused? Did they lean in and stare just a little too hard? Or consider a conversation with a family member about a sensitive topic. When they're trying to convince you of something, do their eyes lock on with a fervor that feels more like a challenge than a connection? Have you ever felt pinned down by someone's gaze? That's the overcompensation. It's not a sign of honesty, it's the mask of honesty. Now, let's talk about the space we occupy. When you feel safe and confident, your body language is open. You take up space, your arms are relaxed, your posture is upright. You are, in a very real sense, open to the world. But when you feel threatened, the opposite happens. Your body instinctively tries to protect itself. It shrinks, it closes off, it creates barriers. A person telling a lie, especially a high-stakes one, feels threatened. They are under attack from your questions, and their biggest fear is being exposed. So, their body goes into a defensive lockdown. I call this building the fort. It has a subconscious attempt to put a physical barrier between themselves and the perceived threat, which is you. The most classic example, of course, is crossing the arms tightly across the chest. But a word of caution here, and this is crucial. Context is everything. A person might cross their arms because they're cold, because it's a comfortable habit, or because they're just thinking. You cannot look at one single gesture in isolation. What you're looking for is a change in posture timed directly with your questioning. I was once interviewing a woman, we'll call her Brenda, about her husband's suspicious disappearance. For the first hour, while we discussed their life together, their finances, their friends, her body language was relatively relaxed. She'd gesture with her hands, lean forward when making a point. The table between us was clear. Then I shifted the topic. I asked, "Brenda, where were you on Tuesday night, the night he went missing?" The change was immediate and dramatic. It was like watching a drawbridge go up. Her arms, which had been resting on the table, snapped across her chest. She then picked up her large handbag from the floor and placed it on her lap, hugging it to her stomach. She had, without a word, built a wall between us made of her arms and her purse. The fort was up. It was a reaction to one specific topic, her whereabouts. That's the key. The timing. This defensive positioning is rooted deep in our primitive brain. It's a remnant of the fight-or-flight response. Your body doesn't know the difference between a tiger in the grass and a detective asking a question that could land you in jail. A threat is a threat. So, the body prepares to shield its vital organs, the heart, the lungs. It's a primal self-preservation instinct. It can also manifest in more subtle ways. Watch for someone who suddenly places an object, a coffee cup, a book, a laptop, directly between you and them right after you ask a pointed question. Or notice if they angle their body away from you, subtly turning their torso or shifting their feet to point toward the nearest exit. Their body is literally looking for an escape route. Have you ever been in an argument with a partner or a friend and seen them suddenly grab a pillow and hold it to their chest? Or a child who, when asked if they broke the lamp, hides behind a piece of furniture? They are building their fort. It's not proof of a lie, but it's a massive red flag that you've hit a nerve. You've breached their defenses and their body is scrambling to rebuild the walls. When a human being is under stress, the body is flooded with chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol. This creates an internal storm of nervous energy. We all know the feeling, that jittery, anxious hum beneath the surface. This energy has to go somewhere. An honest person under the stress of a tough conversation might openly admit they're nervous. A dishonest person has to pretend they are calm and in control, but that nervous energy leaks out anyway. It escapes through small, repetitive, and often unconscious gestures known as self-soothing behaviors. Think of them as pacifiers for adults. These are the body's attempts to calm itself down, to dissipate that stress and anxiety. Spotting these gestures, especially when they spike in response to a specific question, is like seeing a pressure valve release. The most common place for these gestures is the face and neck. The liar might suddenly touch their face, rub their lips, cover their mouth as if to physically stop the lie from escaping, or pull at their earlobe. The neck is another hot spot. You'll see people rub the back of their neck, or men will often reach up and adjust their shirt collar, even if it isn't tight. It's as if the lie is making them feel hot and constricted. I remember a case with an accountant, a very buttoned-up fellow named Gerald, who was suspected of embezzling from his company. He was a rock. His story was consistent, his demeanor was cool. But he had one tell. He had a small mole on the side of his neck. For most of the interview, he never touched it. But whenever I brought up a specific set of invoices from the month of March, his hand would go up and he would start rubbing that mole. Not scratching it, just rubbing it back and forth. It was a subconscious comfort gesture. The topic of the March invoices was causing him immense stress, and his body was trying to soothe that stress by a familiar tactile sensation. He did it 3 times. The 3rd time, I just held my gaze on his hand as he rubbed his neck and said, "What is it about March, Gerald?" He crumbled. These behaviors are so effective because touching certain parts of our body, particularly areas with a high concentration of nerve endings like the face, neck, and hands, can trigger the release of calming hormones like oxytocin. It is the same reason a baby stops crying when it's swaddled, or a hug can make you feel better. It's a biological reset button. It's the brain telling the body, "It's okay, calm down." But for an observer, it signals the exact opposite, that the person is, in fact, not calm at all. When you're talking to someone, watch their hands. Are they fidgeting with a pen, wringing their hands, or picking at their cuticles? Are they suddenly grooming themselves, adjusting their tie, smoothing their pants, brushing away imaginary lint? Ask yourself, did that behavior start or increase right after I asked a particular question? Have you ever noticed yourself doing this? When you're in a stressful job interview or a tense family dinner, what do your hands do? Do you tap your fingers, jiggle your leg, twist a ring on your finger? We all do it. The key isn't that the behavior exists, but when it appears. It's the body's desperate attempt to find comfort in a moment of extreme discomfort, and lying is one of the most uncomfortable things a person can do. So far, we've focused on what you can see: the flicker in the eyes, the fortress of the body, the pacifying gestures of the hands. But some of the most reliable indicators of deception are things you can only hear. Lying doesn't just put a strain on the mind, it puts a physical strain on the body, and that strain echoes in the sound of our voice. When we're relaxed and telling the truth, our speech has a natural rhythm, a comfortable pace and pitch. When we lie, that vocal foundation can crack. One of the most common changes is a rise in vocal pitch. When you're stressed, your muscles tense up, and that includes the vocal cords. Taut vocal cords produce a higher-pitched sound. It might be subtle, just a slight squeak or a shift into a higher register on certain words, but it's often there. The person might not even notice it themselves, but if you're listening for it, it can be as clear as a bell. It's the sound of tension. I worked a cold case once that hinged on a single, decades-old answering machine tape. It was a recording of a man calling his wife's office, leaving a message that he was worried because she hadn't come home the night before. For years, everyone thought it was the message of a concerned husband. But a new sound analyst we brought in noticed something. For most of the message, the husband's voice was in a normal, low range. But when he said the specific phrase, "I have no idea where she could be," the fundamental frequency of his voice jumped by nearly half an octave. It was a fleeting, almost imperceptible rise, but it was a physiological tremor caused by the stress of the lie. That tiny vocal anomaly was enough for us to re-examine his alibi, and it eventually led us to the truth. He knew exactly where she was. Beyond pitch, listen to the pace and pattern of their speech. Lying is mentally taxing. The brain is juggling the truth and the fiction. This can cause the person to speak either faster than usual, rushing to get the lie out, or much slower as they struggle to construct the story in real time. You'll also hear a significant increase in the use of filler words. The you-ums, as, you-knows, and likes start to litter their sentences. These aren't just verbal tics, they are placeholders. They are the sounds the brain makes while it's scrambling to invent the next part of the story or check for inconsistencies. It's the sound of a mental buffer. Finally, pay attention to their breathing. The stress of lying can cause breathing to become shallow and irregular. You might hear them taking sudden, deep breaths in the middle of a sentence, or you might notice their breathing becomes audible. It's the body's fight-or-flight system demanding more oxygen for a perceived emergency. Think about the last time you heard someone get flustered. Did their voice get higher? Did they start stumbling over their words, throwing in ums and ahs? You were hearing the cognitive load of stress made audible. The next time you suspect something is off, close your eyes for a moment and just listen. Tune out the words themselves and focus on the music behind them. The pitch, the tempo, the rhythm. The voice is an instrument, and stress and deception play it in a very particular key. We've covered 5 critical signs: the micro-expression flash, the overcompensating stare, defensive body language, self-soothing gestures, and changes in the voice. If you learn to look and listen for these, you will be leagues ahead of the average person in spotting deception. But before I send you out into the world with this new toolkit, I have to give you the most important rule of all. It's the rule that separates a discerning observer from a paranoid accuser, and it's this: you must always, always, always establish a baseline first. A tell is not a behavior, it's a change in behavior. If you re-talking to a naturally fidgety person who is always touching their face and jiggling their leg, then seeing them touch their face and jiggle their leg doesn't mean anything. That's their normal. That's their baseline. A tell would be if they suddenly stopped fidgeting and became unnaturally still. Conversely, if you're talking to a very stoic, calm person who suddenly starts rubbing their neck and avoiding eye contact, that's a significant deviation. That's a sign. I once consulted on an internal theft case at a large corporation. The primary suspect was a man in the accounting department, a fellow named Stan. During his interview, Stan crossed his arms, spoke in a clipped tone, and barely made eye contact. The managers watching on the video feed were convinced he was guilty. "Look at him," they said. "He's a walking poster for deception." But I'd spent the first 20 minutes of the interview just chatting with Stan about the weather, his commute, his favorite baseball team, and guess what? He did the exact same things. Stan was just a socially awkward, introverted man. His defensive posture was his baseline. The real suspect turned out to be a bright, bubbly woman from marketing who was open, friendly, and smiled through the entire interview, until I asked her about her company credit card statements. Then, for a split second, she bit her lip and her eyes darted to the door. It was a tiny change from her baseline, but it was everything. So, how do you establish a baseline? You start with light, non-threatening conversation. Ask simple, easy-to-answer questions. How was your drive-in? Did you see the game last night? Any plans for the weekend? Pay attention to how they sit, how they talk, how much eye contact they make when they have no reason to lie. That is their normal. That is your control sample. Only then do you move on to the more difficult questions. You are a scientist in that moment, and you need a control before you can properly interpret the results of your experiment. This knowledge is a powerful tool, but it can be misused. Don't go home and start accusing your spouse of cheating because they crossed their arms while talking to you. Don't assume your employee is lying because their voice went up a bit. These signs are not definitive proof of guilt. They are indicators of stress and discomfort. They are red flags that tell you to dig deeper, to ask more questions, to be more curious. They are a sign that you've hit a nerve, and now you have to find out why. Use this knowledge not to become a human lie detector, but to become a better, more perceptive listener. Use it to understand the hidden currents running beneath the surface of a conversation. It will help you protect yourself from those who would deceive you, and perhaps even help you better understand the people you care about. Let's do a quick recap. We have 5 primary channels through which the truth leaks out. First, the micro-expression, that split-second flash of true emotion that the face shows before the brain can censor it. Second, eye contact overcompensation, the liar's stare, where they try too hard to look sincere and end up looking sinister. Third, defensive body positioning, building a physical fort with crossed arms or objects to shield themselves from your questions. Fourth, self-soothing gestures, the repetitive touching of the face, neck, or hands as the body tries to pacify the storm of nervous energy. And fifth, vocal and speech pattern changes, the shifts in pitch, pace, and the use of fillers that reveal the cognitive strain of maintaining a lie. Remember, none of these signs in isolation is a smoking gun. People can be nervous for reasons that have nothing to do with deception. But when you see these signs appear in clusters, and when you see them appear as a distinct change from a person's established baseline in direct response to a specific critical question, that's when your internal alarm should start ringing loud and clear. Your gut instinct is a powerful thing. It's your subconscious mind picking up on these tiny signals and sending you a warning. For years, you may have just called it a hunch or a funny feeling. What I've given you today is the vocabulary to understand what your gut is trying to tell you. I'm empowering you to move from vague feelings to concrete observations. I challenge you to start paying attention. Don't be aggressive about it. Just be a quiet observer of the world around you. In your next conversation with a friend, a family member, or even the cashier at the grocery store, just watch and listen. Notice the natural rhythms of communication. Then, when you find yourself in a situation where the stakes are higher, you'll be prepared. You will be able to see the subtle shift, hear the slight tremor in the voice, and recognize the body's attempt to hide. This isn't about fostering distrust, it's about pursuing clarity. It's about arming yourself with the knowledge to navigate a world that isn't always straightforward. It's about protecting your assets, both financial and emotional. Your greatest strength is your experience, and now you can add a new layer to it. The ability to see beyond the words and perceive the truth that is always there, waiting to be seen. Use these tools wisely. Use them to understand, not just to accuse. And trust yourself. The truth is always there. You just have to learn how to look for it.